Hello explorers, thanks for joining us again and welcome back to our channel. If you are joining us for the first time, we appreciate your time. The United Nations 79th session is over. We are going back into our detailed strategic analysis on this channel that you are used to. In this episode, I will be diving into the odious legacy of Chinese development assistance in the continent of Africa. I will be looking at a number of countries, but today in this episode, I will look at the case of Angola. I will dive into specifics. I shall also be looking into the African and Chinese debt in this episode. I will also explore some very important Chinese loans to Angola and the past corruption in the country. I shall also dive into the need for a forensic audit of the odious debt. I will close this episode with my own conclusion. One thing you should remember, I wrote this script past couple of months ago. It takes me time to dive into some research to resource our own other analytical information to put this video together. So if you like what you're about to see, I will encourage you to smash the like button to appreciate our research. So without any much delay, let's just dive straight into it. Within days of taking office, China's new foreign minister, Qin Gang, was on a plane to his country's main African client, Angola. Landing in Luanda on January 12, Qin Gang was extensively bringing a gift, a 250 million loan to help Angola expand high-speed broadband connections in the country. Some gifts, however, are not what they seem, and some of the recent financial gifts from Chinese sources have been toxic if you look at strategic options. Soon after King visited Angola, the United States Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen traveled to 3 African countries but skipped Angola, possibly because of its checkered history with Chinese development assistance. The case of Angola raised questions about the extent and nature of Chinese loans and infrastructure aid to a growing number of African nations, as well as the consequences of such loans on those countries' relation with the United States of America and other strategic partners with Russia and also the European Union. If you look at strategic options, looking at Africa and the Chinese debt, much of Africa is heading for debt distress. According to a recent Chatham House study, Secretary Yellen and United States of America Secretary of State Anthony Blinken have accused China of overburdening Africa with loans and dragging its feet on providing debt relief. On her recent trip, Yellen did stop in Zambia, the poster child for Chinese so-called debt trap. In this African country, the debt owed to China account for some 40% of its external debt. Owning such a large portion of Zambia's debt has gifted China's immense hold on value and allowed it to store restructuring that are not on its terms. When Zambia defaulted on its euro-dominated debt in 2020, restructuring negotiations were held up due to China's reluctance to restructure its debts within the country. If you look at strategic options, Ghana, Ethiopia, and Sri Lanka have likewise sought debt relief from China. However, any settlement reached with Zambia will likely set a precedent for other development nations in looking at the negotiation. With regards to geopolitics in play, when Minister King visited Angola, he met with Angola's finance minister, Rabat, to hash out the details of the new telecommunication deal. Rabat assured the public that the new loans was under far more favorable terms than Chinese previous loans to Angola. Nonetheless, she did not address whether the loan terms required that a Chinese companies deliver the project, and has been the case on previous occasions. Nor did she note that previous Chinese telecommunication infrastructural projects in Africa, notably in Zambia, enabled the creation of a Chinese-like surveillance system while facilitating Chinese access to critical user data. If you look at strategic options here, Chinese past misuse of telecommunication technology is a significant reason why the United States of America's government and authorities have opposed the use of Huawei and the ZTE infrastructure around the world. If you are new to this channel, we will encourage you to smash the like button, share the video to encourage our research, and also watch other informative video on our YouTube channel. Let's dive back into the video. Has Angola sufficiently studied the risk? Many other countries have learned that participation with Chinese telecommunication companies almost always carries the hidden cost of industrial espionage. Is there a potential threat to Angola's national security if its entire advanced telecommunication structure turns out to have been under Chinese control? If you look at operations regards to Chinese engagement with the country of Angola, and what will the knock-on effect for the relations with the United States, which Angola is desperate to deepen? Washington had been the prime mover behind persuading other Western nations to outlaw Huawei and remove Chinese influence from their telecommunication networks. Based on other telecommunication assistance projects in Africa, the United States of America is legitimately concerned about how China seemingly had to qualms other contravening human rights when it helped countries such as Zambia, Zimbabwe, and South Africa spy on their citizens. If you look at geopolitics as it engages the continent of Africa, Africa at the moment is making strategic choices, setting aside the national security and human rights risk of such projects with Beijing, while owing more debt to China. Angola does not have a great record in managing the servicing foreign debt. Just 3 years ago, it had to turn to the International Monetary Fund for help after following the IMF's tough law prescription. Angola has only now managed to scrap together a budget surplus. So why accept new Chinese loans? Could Angola not use its budget surplus for this project or build its own a long-term project? If you look at other areas, could the United States of America and its allies offer an alternative system under the Build Back Better world? Initially announced with some fanfare at the June 2022 G7 summit, if you look at the question with regards to the Lobito corridor that a number of countries in the continent of Africa are questioning the United States of America, that since the project was launched, no particular development so far has been realized. Angola is China's biggest African client and owes a staggering $21 billion to Beijing, some 40% of its entire public foreign debt stock. Servicing this debt swallows up nearly half of Angola's annual budget. This is a huge burden. Every dollar required to service the debt with China is a dollar Luanda cannot spend on urgent reforms for healthcare, education, public administration, or injustice. If you look at strategic options, as China continues to engage the continent of Africa and the United States of America, including Russia and European Union, continue to observe how China integrates with the continent of Africa. Looking at Chinese loan to Angola and the past corruption issues in the country of Angola. Worse still, the existing debt is linked to Angola's recent history of corruption and state capture. For example, most recently, the public learned how a supposed state-to-state finance project turned out to be yet another corruption scheme that delivered public funds into private pockets. Unscrupulous and greedy officials and businessmen in both Angola and in China set up companies in Hong Kong with official sounding names, the Chinese Investment Fund, known as CIF, and China's Angola International Holding, known as CSIHL. The latter was a joint venture between the CIF, that is 70%, and the Angola National Oil Company, known as Sanangol, that had 30%. According to court recordings, Sanangol sold oil to CSIHL, and at the time of a former Angolan vice president, Manuel Vincent, chaired both the CIF and also the CSIHL. They are not state-owned enterprises, but sham vehicles for channeling money into private bank accounts, transforming Angola and Chinese businessmen into billionaires. Among them was the now notorious Sampa, CIF founder, arrested in 2015 amid Xi Jinping's fight against corruption. Some 1.5 billion of Chinese payment for Angola's oil was never passed on to Angola, according to an indictment of former officials looking at very recently. If you look at strategic options as Africa continues to move forward, engaging its geopolitical partners around the world, along with Vincent, the indicated General Manuel Helder, Vieira and also Diarra Jr., known as Copelipa, and Leopoldino do Nascimento form the triumvirate of the former president dos Santos' inner circles of power. The 80% indictment simply covered Manuel Vincent. The first 40 of the 220 articles denounced the former head of Senegal for his negotiations with China and for his years of self-dealings in the selling of up to 20,000 barrels of oil per day to CSIHL. This case has magnified the predicament that President João Lourenço and Angola judiciary face when fighting corruption. If you look at the struggles in regards to Angola opening its strategic option with global nations, meanwhile, the United States of America aligned with Angola and imposed sanctions on the two generals for their role in the Chinese affair, but it left out oil man Vincent off the sanction list. This double standard to the United States of America also exposes a lot of issues in regards to how United States engages some African countries. This approach represents an overreaching theme in the fight against corruption in Angola, a lack of impartiality. Despite the United States of America's government's best intention, rather than addressing the source of the corruption in Angola, it unknowingly supported President Lourenço's attempt at settling personal scores. If you look at strategic options here, it is important to further detail Vincent's role in establishing large corruption states in Angola. In the aforementioned indictment, the Attorney General's office raised the issue of the CIF and its supposed relations with the Office for National Reconstruction. If you look at other areas, CIF came to Angola promising to carry out work with its own funds. Only in 2020 was it discovered that the CIF projects were being secured by a so-called National Reconstruction Fund link to CSIHL, financed by oil contracts between CSIHL, the privately owned by Vincent and not by Senegal, contrary to what the name would have indicated. And Senegal itself, so to point out, Senegal supplied the CSIHL using without authorization and the name of Office for National Reconstruction. Make Angola research leads to the conclusion that those obscure financial and legal tricks have the same origin, Manuel Vincent and the opacity of the businessmen with China. If you look at the struggle in regards to how Angola engages its partners, Angola is still uncovering the scam and paying the price. For example, 10 billion of Chinese capital was sent to Senegal in 2016, and central bank ledgers at the National Bank of Angola recorded it as the public project. The deal was struck just before the end of the mandate of President dos Santos, the kleptocrat-in-chief, and coincided with the installation of his daughter Isabel dos Santos as president of the board of Senegal. Yet no one can account for the money or indictment, the ultimate destination. If you look throughout the news at the moment, the daughter of former president is facing some challenges financially at the moment. If you look at the need for a forensic audit of the odious debt in Angola, loans from China to Angola are so often shrouded in obscurity and also controversy that today's government should be worried of accepting any more. Research at the Marca Angola estimate that as much as half of the nation's debt, also owned to China, did not end up in public projects but in private banks' accounts. This phenomenon has become to be known as the legal terms as odious debt, as described by the International Monetary Fund. The epithet odious refers to the corrupt nature of the regime taking on the debt. There is a case to be made that a successor government should not have to bear the burden of servicing odious debt, especially if creditors have been alerted to improper or illegal deals in advance. This is not a call for non-payment of debt in general, so to point out to China or any other country, but the money owed to China should be paid. But when there is evidence of suspect or corrupt loans, should both countries not seek a renegotiation of the repayment terms to permit a haircut or reduction to alleviation an unfair debt burden that Angola is facing at the moment? This renegotiation will require a thorough forensic audit of previous Chinese loan because by 2015, the year in which Sam Pa was arrested, Chinese authorities were already in possession of sufficient evidence of illegal capital transfer, masquerading as the state-to-state loans. So both Angola and China have an obligation to look again at the situation. It is worth noting too that as Secretary Yellen and many other world leaders like Olaf Scholz have insisted, China needs to join other Western nations in agreeing to renegotiating discrete debt. The example of Chinese dilatory tactics with Zambia in a case in point. The World Bank estimated that Chinese credit to developing nations represent almost as much as all other governments' credit combined. Zambia's total debt to China reached 28% of the gross domestic product in 2021, according to figures from the International Monetary Fund. In the face of unserviceable debt and with the prospect of also alternative sources of external finance drying up, Angola was obliged to follow rigorous International Monetary Fund imposed budgetary controls in the hopes of regaining economic credibility. The inevitable consequences have fallen on the Angola's people, half of whom live beneath the poverty line. Widespread dissatisfaction cost the government, also governing party, and President Lourenço millions of votes for his re-election campaigns in August of 2022. Therefore, it is arguably that in the Angolan government best interest not to simply take on more public debt with China before conducting a forensic audit of existing obligations. If that audit reveals, as we suspect, also odious debt from the previous highly corruption Angolan regime, then the leaders of the two countries might well consider activities debt renegotiation. If you look at strategic options, ultimately, the United Nations may need to consider this issue under the terms of Article 1 to 3 and 14, among others, the United Nations Charter. It will be desirable to create a consensus on how best to handle odious debts in international law. We are not suggesting that all debts owed to China is odious. That's not what we are saying here. Or that Angola should default or refuse to pay. Money owed to China should be paid. That will be absurd. Instead, there should be a forensic audit of existing debt, permitting the current Angolan government and its partners renegotiating the terms of deals proven to be corrupt. Any constructive solution that includes China, in turn, could set a worldwide precedent for loans to developing countries. Angola has clearly derived benefit from its relationship with China. Make no doubt, when the Civil War ended in 2002, the People's Republic of China stepped up to offer financial and material support for the enormous task of reconstruction that Angola needed when few other countries were willing to help. Much of today's debt to China helped rebuild railways, roads, hospitals, and also public housing across Angolan provinces, and more infrastructure remains under construction. But the evidence of bad loans, diverted funds, and private enrichment suggests carefully consideration by both sides should be necessary before any new loans are offered or accepted by the country of Angola. If you look at strategic options at how Africa engaged its geopolitical partners, make no doubt China has helped African countries in a number of areas, from infrastructure, development, growth, ports, airports, and dams, whole the continent entirely. As I close this episode, how do those cases of corruption affect the credibility of Angola's foreign policy? President Lourenço's government has made considerable effort to repair relations with the United States of America against a background of Russian war on Ukraine and concerns over its ties to China. Yet, in the space of just a couple of weeks, Angola has welcomed official visits from foreign ministers of both Russia and China, complicating the relationship. However, how does this visit and the announcement of yet another Chinese loan fit into Angola's stated foreign policy objective? Has Angola fallen back into some Pan-African stance of non-alignment, or have the United States of America-Angolan relation hit a roadblock? After all, Joe Biden did not give João Lourenço an audience at the United States African Summit, and Secretary Yellen did not honor him with a personal visit with regards to that particular period. In the absence of a clear and straightforward position by Angola, foreign policy and analysts are beginning to question whether, just as he zigzags on other national policy, President Lourenço cannot decisively choose which policy on the table is best for his country and his people. We want to thank you for watching. If you are new here, we'll encourage you to smash the like button, check some of our other informative videos on this YouTube channel, and we have informed you regards to the odious legacy of Chinese development assistance in the country of Angola and how the continent of Africa to re-strategize its relationship with its geopolitical partners. For now, we want to thank you for watching. We are looking forward to meeting you soon in our next episode. Have a good day. Bye-bye.